Okay, I lost all my paperwork.
All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. The Affordable Housing Subcommittee is now commenced. It's June 26th at 4 o'clock. This meeting is being held virtually. For those who are participating remotely, we ask that you mute yourselves until called upon to speak to avoid feedback and background noise. For those who have dialed in using the call-in number to unmute to speak, dial *6 on your phone so that you may only use the chat function to request to speak. Also, to comply with the state open meeting law, attendance and votes will be done by way of roll call. So first we'll do the roll call. So we got Maggie is here.
Present.
Mary Ann Beerling.
Here.
And I am here. And then our ex officio members, we've got David Wall. Hi, David.
Hello.
Megan Headings. Hi, Megan.
Hello.
And Mike and Michael Edmonds.
And I am present.
Hey, Michael. And then Sarah. I think you're our city representative now, right? Or is it Rachel?
I'm kind of the sort of staff liaison that's support, but Neto and Rachel are kind of the ones who help with all the logistics.
Sarah is your subject matter expert.
All right. Since there's no attendees outside of who's in this conference, I don't think there's a call to audience, but I'll just ask, does anybody have anything they want to speak about? All right, so we're going to move on to agenda item number 2, which is the Neighborhood Partnership Housing Services. And Marianne, that's yours.
Can everybody hear me?
Can you guys hear Marianne? I can.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So there's a little presentation that I asked Neto to run. It's 8 minutes, but these guys did a presentation to the Federal Home Loan Bank Advisory Committee, and it was really innovative. Their pricing is really affordable. Plus, they also do so they do affordable homes and ADUs. They have they do factory built ADU financing as well. So they have their own factory. They have down payment assistance, home improvement loans. They do foreclosure and renter services. And I just liked their presentation, and they're creative. And I thought that this might be a good presentation for the full commission as, an alternative way to look at things. And also as, we're looking for, other best practices and things like that to bring to city staff. So they are working in, so their mission is to create intergenerational wealth for underserved communities of color. And that's why I thought it would be a very good full commission because of the equity committee. And they're definitely looking at racial wealth and the racial wealth gap. So anyway, Neto, if you would run that video, that would be great.
Yeah, Rachel will run it off
Yeah.
of her computer. Thank you,
Sorry, I
Rachel.
shared my screen a little too early.
Okay, so maybe start over.
It's starting now.
Okay, perfect. And let me know if you guys can hear it. Will you turn it up?
Over 3
Yeah.
transformative
NPHS has enriched the lives of thousands of families, lifting them to greater economic prosperity while cultivating resilient, vibrant, and equitable communities. Our journey is rooted in a holistic approach to community development, social innovation, and our unwavering commitment to advancing equity. At NPHS, engineering transformative community impact isn't just what we do. It's part of our organizational DNA. This dynamic approach empowers NPHS to tackle the immediate challenges families face today, while also preparing NPHS to tackle the new challenges our communities will face tomorrow.
To push innovation across all the areas of our program, we form partnerships to extend our reach and impact. We are pioneering innovations in affordable homeownership using factory-built technology. By strategically implementing energy-efficient and renewable energy solutions, we are fortifying the pillars of sustainable homeownership and climate resilience. As a CDFI, we designed inclusive lending products that empower families to create and preserve generational wealth while providing impactful opportunities for financial institutions and strategic partners to invest in our communities.
As the cost of conventional on-site, single-family construction soars, we've taken innovative strides by launching Homes by NPHS, a social enterprise specializing in factory-built housing. While collaborating with homeowners, developers, multifamily property owners, and local government, we are introducing cost-effective, climate-adaptive, resilient, single-family homes and accessory dwelling units, ADUs, into the marketplace.
That our climate-adapted, resilient homeownership construction seamlessly blends eco-friendly construction, energy efficiency, health-conscious design elements, wildfire resilience, and equity. Collectively, these components not only help NPHS create homes that rise to meet the wellness of our families, but also counter the disproportionate impact of climate on our communities of color.
Our Gateway Factory-Built Demonstration Project is going to impact the community, help increase home values. This is a blighted vacant lot, so it will revitalize this entire block. It will also introduce to the community the benefits of highly energy efficient, solarized factory-built homes. So we hope that the community will also look at rehabbing and retrofitting their existing homes and make them a lot more energy efficient. This is where our initiative that's integrated in this whole project about climate adaptation and climate resiliency comes into play.
Collaborating with municipalities to rehabilitate aging housing stock is crucial for multiple interlocking reasons: energy efficiency, health, and climate resilience. Older homes often suffer from poor insulation, hazardous materials, outdated electrical and HVAC systems, which compromise the well-being of our families and energy efficiency.
Hi, my name is Beatrice Lopez. I'm a resident of San Bernardino, and with the help of NPHS, we're currently renovating my home. This house has been in the family as far as I can remember, in the 50s. One of the most important things that NPHS has been helping me with is redoing the wiring. I was always worried about fires, so now I'm really glad that I'm gonna have working sockets. It's the beginning for me. I just want to thank NPHS.
Our city partnerships transform aging homes into healthy, safe housing environments, incorporating climate resilient features such as wildfire resilience and renewable energy installations, reducing the community's vulnerability to extreme weather events. This collaborative approach enriches residents' quality of life while contributing to broader goals of well-being and climate resilience.
My name is Travis Boom. I'm from San Bernardino. I lived here all my life. Me and my sister bought this home back in 1996. We had a roof that was deteriorating. The shingles were already 30 years old. Santa Ana winds with the roof blew off some of the shingles. It was very expensive to get redone. We really couldn't afford it at the time, so we reached out to NPHS and they helped us out. Went flawless. Very responsive, always kept me updated on every little thing. Really, really pleasant to work with. I was kind of at first, because I never did nothing like that. At first thought, hey, is this too good to be true type thing, And now after I looked into it and read up on it a little bit, it was a great program. By having this new roof, it does impact our life quite a bit. Didn't have to put out that much money for the roof at all. Very good organization to work with. I want to thank NPHS for putting a new roof on our home.
Creating generational wealth through homeownership is at the heart of what we do. Home is where the heart is. That's why we have a heart in our logo. NPHS has assisted thousands of families in achieving homeownership, helping families create generational wealth that will be transferred from generation to generation. From 2009 to 2016, MPHS helped more than 2,000 families, guiding them through the challenging aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis and successfully helping them avoid foreclosure. Knowing the importance of preserving generational wealth, we continue to provide foreclosure intervention counseling.
My name is Terry Ticey. I live in Fontana, California. I wanted more for my boys. Everything got really rough during the time, the COVID time. My income dropped significantly, and that's when I found out about the California mortgage relief. Finally, I just said, you know what? I'm just gonna call the number. And I said, can you give me someone who can help me? That's when she recommended here. And I spoke with Lisa. I told her the situation. Oh my gosh. She really was there for me. When they said they approved me, that was for $34,000. I couldn't believe it. I'll go back just to look at it, just to read, just to see that that was real. NPHS will have counselors available and ready to help assist you. And I want to thank NPHS for saving my home.
As a community development financial institution, MPHS has developed a suite of loan products designed to foster, safeguard, and amplify generational wealth. Alongside our financial institution and local municipality partners, MPHS has deployed over $30 million in capital into our local communities. Our portfolio of loan offerings is both diverse and innovative, encompassing down payment assistance, home repair financing, small business microlending, and solar energy solutions. We've also recently launched ADU Go, a cutting-edge loan product specifically tailored to finance factory-built accessory dwelling units.
Hi, my name is Wayne Lewis. Thanks to NPHS, you guys helped me purchase my first home in Helmet. I moved around as a kid. It was very hard for me to purchase a home. With your blessing, I was able to purchase my first home. It's something I always wanted to be able to accomplish, is to provide a home for my family, something that I own. I've been paying rent since I was 18. None of my family members have a home. We always lived in a one-bedroom apartment. I have a letter that I wrote to myself when I was 17, stating like, my goal is to own a home one day. It was very important for me to accomplish this because I'm trying to provide the best for my two daughters. They have somewhere always to call home. Do things like paint the roof like they wanted. I painted their room colors like 5 different colors, bro. And like we painted the wall, just doing things that, you know, giving things to them that I wasn't able to ever do in my life. In PHS, I was also able to make my mortgage a little lower than what my rent was while I was paying in Upland. I was able to find a place in a great community, continue to raise my daughters and provide for my family. Thank you CAR for the grant, and thank you NPHS for the down payment assistance. Everything is truly appreciated.
Every action we take is steered by a singular transformative vision to forge a future where every family thrives in financial prosperity, residing in communities that are economically vibrant and rooted in equity. This guiding vision is the cornerstone that will shape our work for the next 3 decades.
All right, well, thank you. That was good. Marianne, do you have any idea where they get their funding? What's their source of their financial aid? Marianne, you still there?
They work a lot with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. You know, they also have, you know, other sources of financing, but the presentation you just saw is not what they give and not what they would give to the commission. It's a lot better. Plus, you know, everybody can ask questions like how much, you know, do these cost, and what are your sources of funding, and how do you, you know, work these loans out, and you know, they go into a little bit more detail on, you know, what their factory built is all about. So, you know, the truth of the matter is, you know, with down payment assistance, which, you know, Maggie and Megan know, and, you know, with being able to build something that's affordable, people really are paying less in their mortgage with this kind of a product than they are in rent right now. So I don't know. I just thought it was a good, and they talk a lot about, you know, how they do their climate efficiency in their products. They talk also too about, you know, this gap, this racial wealth gap in their presentation, which I found incredibly interesting. So I don't know. I mean, I would love to see it go before you know, I can call them and get them to do a presentation for the next commission meeting.
Yeah, I think that would be great. If you could make a contact over there and find somebody that's willing to do that in August. Sarah?
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to chime in and say they're a CDFI, so that's a community development financial institution. So they're like a bank, right? Like,
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, and so I think that's the one thing that they have going for them is like they have that access to being like a bank. And here in Tucson, I think we have the Industrial Development Authority is a financial institution, and they do, you know, loans and stuff based off of bonds and things like that. But I do think that is the one thing is that it's finding that financial source. And I don't know how you start a community development financial institution, but I think that's the one thing that they have going for them to help with all that.
Yeah, and they can definitely talk about that because that's not how they started out. So they grew into that.
Megan?
I was just gonna say, Marianne, if you do have them come out, I'd be really interested in some of their manufactured housing and the ADU projects to know more about where the land is that they're able to place these on and if they help with that piece of it for the individuals.
Yeah, it would be a great question.
Maggie?
Well, I was thinking of Chicanos por la Causa. They're also a CDFI and they have a mortgage company now. So, I know they want to kind of do more in the community along with, along the lines of affordable loan products. So we may want to even invite them to see, Patricia Garcia Duarte is heading that up.
Right.
Okay, I can make contact and see if they're, if I know when the August meeting is, then I can see if they'd be able to do pretty much the same presentation they did at the Federal Home Loan Bank Advisory Council, and then, spend some more time with questions.
So it's going to be August 1st.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Any other thoughts or comments on the neighborhood partnership housing services? All right. So the third agenda, Marianne, this one's also got your name on it, but I think we might have already handled it, but that's letters for full commission to approve.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the email that Neto sent out earlier today with the.
Yeah. And where are we on that? Because I thought he sent that out before today.
No, it went out today. There was one typo. I think he's issued a correction. So there should be an email in your box. And Maggie, you should have it as well on the communication to mayor and council from the commission.
Yeah,
okay.
So we're just going to do a remote vote on that. And then we decided to take the month of July off.
Okay. So I have to give you my vote verbally because for some reason I'm not accessing anything here at the house, and
it doesn't have to be done today. You can do it tomorrow or the next day. It's not a rush.
Yeah, okay. So I won't be here. It's my birthday, so I'm leaving.
Okay.
Happy birthday.
Text Neto and just let him know that you're good with it.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Anything else on that, on agenda item 3? Okay, agenda item 4 is the housing action plans. So I gave Sarah a little mini research project so there was a presentation given by, what was that, the individual's name? Do you remember?
Nolan Gray.
Nolan Gray, yes. And he was talking about a lot of the stuff that we wrestle with here, you know, the zoning issues, affordability issues, why it's so expensive to get these projects done. And he cited two cities that when he was researching how to bring down the cost of housing, he brought up Buffalo and Minneapolis as having established policies and a plan that he thought were doing a really good job at breaking down the costs. And so I'd asked Sarah if she could maybe do a little bit of digging to see if she could find those, and so that we could look at them in more detail here. So how's it going?
Great. Hi. So the original assignment was other cities' housing action plans, right? That's what the mayor had said at the retreat, I believe, and that was sort of the first step. We do have the HAST plan, right? So we already have a housing plan. I wasn't sure where to go with this, but I sort of created something based off of what Jim's been asking. So I'm going to share my screen. And let me know if you guys can see it.
We can.
Okay. Okay, so just sort of housing action plans, quick research, what I've come up with. So what is a housing action plan? There are sort of regulatory requirements for action plans, quote unquote, right? And there's the federal regulatory requirements, which is anybody who gets HUD funding has to go through a consolidated planning process. And so oftentimes when we hear the word action plan, we think of the annual action plan and the consolidated report that has to be done every year by any jurisdiction who gets CDBG, home, and any of these other programs. That currently is happening at the city. We do that. We have to do it every year. And right now we're doing our P-CHIP, which you guys have all heard about and learned about. And so the P-CHIP is happening, and that's to fulfill that federal regulatory requirement. Now, we also see the word action plan, housing action plans come up when states have regulations that require municipalities to do action plans. And so we're seeing this happen a lot more. And we're seeing these terms used a lot more because states are now mandating that jurisdictions have to come up with housing action plans. We're seeing a lot of this happen within the last few years, last 5 years. This year, there's a bunch of states that have passed that, including Arizona. So Arizona just had some legislation. We'll talk about that at the end, but we are now also regulated by the state to kind of come up with an inventory plan. There's also housing plans in general that jurisdictions just create. And, you know, I showed the example, we have our housing affordability strategy for Tucson. So we created our own quote unquote housing action plan. Flagstaff created their 10-year housing plan. We looked at them. We've looked at Phoenix. We've looked at Tempe. Denver created their housing and inclusive Denver plan, which really gets into policy and in strategy for creating housing. Austin had their strategic blueprint. And then Jim had mentioned Buffalo and Minneapolis. Well, Minneapolis doesn't have its own housing plan. They just created a very robust, comprehensive plan that has an affordable and accessible housing section. And all of the changes that Minneapolis are doing, all of the zoning changes and things that they're doing to create more housing is directly related to their general plan that sort of set the tone and the policy for what to do to create more affordable and accessible housing. So that happened at a general plan level. And then Buffalo, I didn't find any actual specific plan that they created. And what was in the presentation that Jim saw was speaking to them changing their parking requirements and reducing parking requirements to bolster more development, not just for housing, but just also just more development in general, because parking ends up becoming one of the most expensive things. And so, but there was no specific housing plan that Buffalo had created. So those are sort of the three different types of plans that exist out there. I have copies to all, I have them all downloaded. If you all want access to that, let me know to go read them. But that was just sort of where I saw the plans sort of grouped into different categories. Now, the state did just pass. Oh, wait. Well, so we'll go back to looking at like those. I pulled two examples of state action plans. And so Oregon has a statewide planning goal that requires cities to inventory their buildable lands and ensure that there's enough land to accommodate housing needs over a 20-year period. And so Portland created their housing needs analysis, which is sort of the first step as required by the state mandate in Oregon. So you can see they've adopted their housing needs analysis, and they're currently in discussion on their draft for their housing production strategy. So it's sort of a two-phase thing that happens in the state of Oregon. The other example I looked at for statewide housing action plans is the Washington state. They require HAPs, housing action plans. And you can kind of see the CTAC one that I pulled has objectives that are very similar to what we have in HAST already, right? Creating complete communities, developing villages near light rail, increasing missing middle opportunities. So it has a little bit more sort of policy as well as a needs analysis. And so the state of Arizona recently passed SB 1162, which is has a second, it's mostly about rezoning timelines, trying to support going through entitlement process and shrinking that rezoning timeline. But they also have added as a second provision to SB 1162, 9469, adding this section to say municipalities need to create a housing needs assessment in an annual production report or a housing production report. So this has now been mandated by the state of Arizona to all jurisdictions. So the city of Tucson by January 1st, 2025 has to publish a housing needs assessment. And I just pulled this language directly from the bill. And then we also have to create an annual housing production report. So those two things look at, population growth, job growth, how much land is zoned residential already, what's zoned to single family, what's zoned to multifamily, and what our need is. So where are we seeing deficiencies? Housing existing population, housing the workforce, what the growth projections are for the population, and what are the housing needs across the income levels. So this housing needs assessment will say you need this many units between this AMI and this AMI to fill your need. I think this is great. Personally speaking, I feel like this is what we need. And so I'm kind of happy the state's telling us to do it. Granted, they're not like giving us any funding to do it. So we have to figure out how we're going to fund it. But I do think this is sort of that missing piece to really be able to speak to it. And then the production report will go into how many development applications did we receive, how many lots and units were completed, how many lots were approved or not approved. So, even thinking of like certain zoning projects that might have gone through this year. And I don't remember if it was this year or last year, but we've seen some projects go to the zoning examiner and get denied. And so being able to say there were this many housing units proposed in this project and it was denied at zoning examiner. And so that's also something that has to be included in the report. And then the status and progress in meeting the municipality's housing needs. So sort of that production, what are we doing? How are we building to meet the need of what we have? And so it's a state mandate. I've heard it's Planning and Development Services Department's responsibility to create this document. or be the ones that report. But of course, the Housing and Community Development Department will be supporting this because it's directly tied to housing. It's also not just affordable housing. It's, you know, the whole supply spectrum, market rate, as well as income restricted. But you can see housing needs across all income levels is included in this. So we're looking at affordable housing as well as market rate housing. And we have a quick turnaround time. And so we are working on this right now. It was kind of funny because this all happened sort of since Jim gave me this task. So this presentation might have taken a little bit of a turn. Not 100% sure, you know, what you guys need or where you want to go. But this is sort of what I pulled together to showcase, you know, the various levels of housing action plans that exist. And happy to help answer any questions. And if there's anything else that you guys need for sort of what your goals are.
Well, so when the mayor brought that up, I mean, my initial knee-jerk well, kind of what prompted that was I said, there's only so many recommendations that we can make. I mean, there's only so many things that the city can do to get more affordable housing projects. And I actually think the HAST plan is a good plan. I mean, there's a lot of really good suggestions in there. And it's just a question of if the city's going to follow through on them or not. And so, you know, when we made our recommendations to the city, we looked at the HAST plan and we pulled out what we thought were going to be the best items and, you know, said, okay, well, let's start with these because we think they're going to have the biggest impact. And they've definitely had an impact. I think the city of Tucson has done much better competing for projects these last few years. And I think part of that is because of the work that, you know, HCD and the commission and everybody's doing to compete for those affordable housing dollars. And that's all good stuff. So, you know, if you don't think there are any other, I mean, the whole idea was, is there anything else that we're missing, right? Is there any other ideas? Are there any things that we're overlooking? And I'm not sure that there are. I mean, we could go back to the HAST plan again and take another look at that and say, okay, well, these are the 10 or 12 major suggestions that came from the city, and maybe say, okay, well, if we're going to do these first four, which were the zoning, the bond measure, the housing trust fund, and there was two other smaller ones, like the parking, I think that was part of the zoning. The impact fee waiver. Those four were kind of the top of the list. You know, we can go back and take another look at it and see if there's other things in there that we think, you know, should be kind of next on the priority list, you know, or we can try to focus on seeing those first items through. But I think this is good. You know, the housing needs assessment is a recommendation actually that came from this subcommittee as well. When we were going through and looking at a goal for the city of Tucson, that was one of the things we came back and we said we thought that the city should do. So it's in line with that. So I'm excited to see that and you know, see how the data correlates to what we thought it was when we did the goal, the housing goal.
Yeah, I agree. And I will say, I think that we have a lot of the pieces in place, like you said, Jim, and I really think based off of the, you know, the presentation that Nolan Gray gave and all of the reforms that are happening across the country, a lot of it is really tied to zoning and development standards. And I know, and I do think there's more to be done here regarding that. I don't think we've done enough. We've asked them to look at it, and there's been some looking at things, but we haven't, you know, done anything yet that I think really opens the gate to allowing more development. And so, you know, another thing with the state is they allowed ADU, you know, they did the ADUs, the ADU bill was a part of it. And, you know, we had already allowed ADUs in the city of Tucson. However, the state's bill is more robust and, you know, even allows more ADUs to be built and going up to a bigger height and being a little bit bigger and just being more or less restrictive than our code was. And so I think that seeing sort of the things they put in there, like setbacks of 5 feet, not variable setbacks, et cetera. So I do think that there's more room to be done on that level. And if there's like more specific recommendations that the commission can get to, like, you know, whatever you think specifically in the zoning code to change, and really pushing and advocating for that, I think that might be a next best step, because you're right, like the HASP plan has a lot of this stuff. And I think that, you know, being asked what other cities are doing, well, we're really in line with what other cities are doing. And here's the thing, they're more specific about setbacks, parking, and they're changing these things. And maybe that's what, you know, the recommendation could be. So yeah, I mean, based off of what I found, like we're really in line with a lot of stuff. It's just to the level of progressiveness and, like, you know, how quickly are we addressing the development code, I think is the key issue that's holding us back from seeing that trigger in production. Because the other thing I've researched and in my research have found is places that have relaxed zoning, like parking, setbacks, minimum lot size, have allowed more infill and density, like fourplexes and the middle housing. The rents are decreasing because supply is increasing. So it's a perfect supply and demand instance. And so Portland has they got rid of all their parking requirements. They've really mandated, you know, inclusionary housing policies so that there's a lot of affordable housing being built. They have a lot of infill housing being built, and rent prices since 2017 have gone down 1%. So they've actually decreased. Whereas in Tucson, since 2017, rent prices have increased 67%. So it's actually more affordable for me right now to go live in Portland than it is in Tucson. And that's mind blowing to me. And there's a direct relation to this being able to build the inventory up because you have less restrictive requirements. And so I think that's kind of the tipping point where we're at here. And I do agree that maybe this needs assessment, you know, it's kind of perfect timing that the bill passed and you guys are talking about this, because I agree, Jim, that I think it will help inform a lot of things. And maybe that's what we need to kind of push the next step, right? And the data will be good because it's like we can really showcase what we have and speak with solid data.
Yeah, well, you're definitely preaching to the choir here.
Well, I know, but how do we do it, right? We're in the choir room here, but how do we get the voices to the whole world?
Yeah. Marianne, did you have something?
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing, you know, is really good. And Sarah, I think you should be working on this with planning and development and representing HCD. And I do think that HCD does need to be involved with this. Often, I think affordable housing gets dropped, and low-income home ownership gets dropped when these kinds of discussions go on. So I hope that there is that relationship that happens, and I think our committee and the commission need to support that. But I also think, Jim, that I don't know that we need to go back and review what we've already reviewed, but I do think we need to follow up on what we have presented already to mayor and council.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yep. I agree. Maggie?
Sarah, do you think it would be like helpful to also know, you know, inventory, like what do we have? Like for instance, PCCLT, we have a few, you know, vacant parcels, and we're, you know, planning what are we going to do with that? Obviously affordable housing of some sort. So, you know, would that be helpful when you're doing this report to just know, hey, this is something that we could do here? I don't know. I'm just, you know, thinking how that may be helpful in report, and also would help guide us as to best what we should be doing with these parcels.
Yeah, and Maggie, I think that we're gonna end up contracting and having, you know, someone else. I think we have some on-call contracts that I think we're gonna be able to utilize, like affordable housing researcher contracts that we've had set up here in HCD, and they do this type of work. Like, when I was researching other places who do action plans, I even saw the groups that we already have contracted writing these plans for other states. So we're going to end up contracting with a consulting firm to help us with that. I think the key point of the needs assessment is, and what I feel like what we might see, right, is like, we know affordable homeownership is needed here, but what AMI do we really need the most affordable homeownership units for? We know that Piclet, like, you know, Maggie, you guys are 80% and below, but is there a need for homeownership between 80 and 100%? And understanding what that need is so that we can kind of adjust and figure out what we need to build for that need. And so, I don't think it's going to go into like parcel by parcel analysis and all of that, but I do think it's helpful to know those. And Maggie, like, I think being in touch with us and sending us that information as we continue to move forward, I think the needs assessment is really going to look more from a higher level and saying, like, you need X number of units for this AMI block, and you need this number of units for this AMI block, and you need this many market rate units. And that's, I think, the goal of what the needs assessment is going to say. I know we've done needs assessments in smaller ways and more like community, you know, like area needs assessments, but this is like a holistic city needs assessment, and not just for affordable, but just like the whole market in general. The county is also working on they're trying to do their dashboard that they've created, and they had funding put aside. I know David's heard a lot about that process. We were hoping to piggyback on to the county's, you know, market analysis, because they're going to be doing all of this work as well. But their RFP is still under negotiation with the people they selected, and their contract is still under negotiation. And it doesn't look like we'll really be able to utilize that, because we have to get this turned around by January 1st. But I do think, Maggie, that it's not just for affordable low income. It's really to look at the whole continuum of need. And I feel like we'll start to see and help that kind of determine what could get built on some of these sites, right? And we can all figure that out together once we get the needs assessment.
Thank you.
All right, so before we move on to the next topic, I guess the ask is, if anybody is aware of other housing plans that we should be reviewing from other cities, yeah, please bring it up. We'll try to track it down and get it out to everyone on the team. Otherwise, you know, I think it would make sense to just go back to what we've got and see if there's other things in there that we should be taking a closer look at. I guess is my feeling. So is there any other final thoughts before we move on? Megan?
Well, if you're going to look at other communities, you may already have, but Houston would be interesting, who doesn't have zoning.
Yeah. Do you want to see it, Sarah? If you
Wouldn't that be nice?
Well,
I just thought I would throw it out there.
They don't have zoning, but they have ordinances in place that also guide land use and development. So it's just not zoning like we know zoning, but they have development standards through ordinances that they do have in place. Austin as well is like another city that has different types of zoning requirements than we do. I really think that the meat is in the detail of what we've already recommended, right? So we've recommended, or this, you know, the HAST recommends and has the policy to look at the zoning code. But I think we need to say, okay, you've looked at it. Now we need to eliminate parking, or we need to, you know, eliminate minimum lot size, or like starting to really come up with those specific things. I'll even be so wild and progressive to say, get rid of the Unified Development Code and start from scratch, because it's not the Bible. You know, there are other ways to do code. It's just, it feels like a daunting and big process. But, you know, sort of, we've said the highest level of policy recommendation is to, you know, make the development code better for affordable housing, but like, what does that mean? And I think that's the next level. And you could look at other plans and see what they say, but like, they do end up just getting more specific, and it really it goes to those kind of 3 hot topics.
I wrote that down, that Sarah thinks the city of Tucson should delete the Unified Development Code.
Just delete, just it's gone.
Yes.
No, everybody knows that, so it's not.
We should publish that.
No, they all know, and I was a reviewer of it, so like I've reviewed, I've done it, but yeah, it's true.
All right, good. Any other final thoughts? All right, so let's go on to agenda item number 5. Rachel, can you make me a presenter?
Yes, Jim, I made you a co-host, so you should be able to share your screen.
Okay, let me try. So this one, it's titled New Construction Fees and Costs for Multifamily Projects. Really what this is, there is an effort underway by the city to look at impact fees and redo the impact fees for the city of Tucson. It happens every 5 years. 5 years ago, when Development Services redid the impact fees, they eliminated the multifamily housing category, combining it with residential. And essentially what happened is they doubled the impact fees for multifamily, and it basically remained unchanged for single family. So, the argument that I had at the time is that, the impact of a multifamily project is not the same as a single family residential, especially when it comes to, streets, the density, parks. You can make an argument that for fire and for police, it's the same. But I think definitely for parks, a lot of the amenities are in apartments that replace public parks. So it wasn't well received. They did it. And so now, they're going back and taking another look at it. And so I thought it'd be good for us as a group to make a recommendation to Development Services on what we think the city should do in terms of impact fees. And so the way I started that was I basically said, okay, well, let's take a step back and try to better understand all of the costs associated with doing a new development. And so this is what I put together is a gross generalization of costs, and I'm going to share my screen here. All right, can you guys see this Excel spreadsheet?
Yes.
Okay, so what I did is I tried to categorize, I tried to lump into main categories on costs that don't have actually anything to do with the construction. So some of it's construction related, but a lot of this is not, or it's things that are being added to the codes that are driving up the cost of construction. So the major categories are the government and utility fees, city of Tucson costs based on code requirements. There's a category for affordable housing related costs, other soft costs, and then this has been kind of my hot button lately is the 2024 IBC code changes and what I think those impacts are going to be to construction costs. So I'd just like to go through this and get everybody's feedback. I've called several different developers to talk about, what they see for these costs. So a lot of them I don't have actual visibility to, but I've been calling people and what I tried to do is kind of take an average. So you see the items, this is the average cost per unit. And I said, okay, if we're going to build a 250 unit apartment project, what does that cost extend out to? So what I'd like to do is just kind of go through each of these sections and get feedback from all of you. If there's categories that I've missed or you don't think that these are accurate, let's try to get it fine-tuned. And then, ideally we would use this to create a recommendation to the city on how we think they should be adjusting impact fees. Does that make sense, everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So starting with the government utility fees. So what I'm going to do is put in parentheses who these get paid to. So sewer connection fees are typically paid to Pima County. These, for what it's worth, are some of the highest fees in the state. So they average, it's based off of the water meter size. So the larger the water meter in there, the higher the fees, but the average is about $1,300 a unit for sewer fees. Water meter fees, these are the city of Tucson. And actually, a little bit to my surprise, these were lower than like Marana and some of the other surrounding communities. So these are actually pretty good. They came out to about $420 a unit. This is also based off of water meter size. So TEP fees, these are the connection fees. So it typically includes your primary, your secondary wire, transformers, the meters. TEP really does not publish their rates. So once the plans are through the city and permits are pulled, they'll look at it. They won't typically look at it before you pull permits, and they'll do their design and then they'll tell you what the fees are. And if there's not power available nearby, the fees can go up significantly from this. We've got a project in Mesa, a 200 unit project in Mesa, that Mesa Power didn't have power available within 2 miles. It was I think almost a $2 million utility hookup fee. So they're appealing that right now. But so that's one of those things that it can vary a lot depending on how close power is to the site. Impact fees. So this is obviously City of Tucson. For affordable housing project, there's, and I should probably put a credit for those projects, but for affordable housing projects, the city will waive up to $150,000 per project, correct, Sarah?
Wait, ask me that one more time. Sorry.
City will waive.
The answer is yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, up to 150K. Yes. And it's not waive, it's subsidized.
Directly. City pays it directly.
Yeah.
Okay. Design review fees, I just estimated those about $1,000 a door. And it depends on the number of pages of the plans and, you know, the weight of the plans. Sales tax. So there's 3 forms of sales tax: state, county, and city. So it's the way they calculate sales tax on construction projects is it's 65% of the general use tax. The idea is that on most construction projects, materials make up 65% of the cost and 35% is labor. So they just say, we're going to take the entire construction amount and 65% of that is materials. So that's what we're going to charge sales tax on. So that was kind of the thought process the state had when they came up with that rule. So the state rate is 5.6%, the county is 0.5%, and the city is 2.6%. So you can see that for all the governmental and utility fees, it costs about $23,000 a unit on average. So on a 250 unit project, that'd be $5.78 million. So any comments or changes you guys think we should make to that section?
No, looks about right.
Hey, Jim, have you shown this to other contractors?
No.
Talk to?
No.
Do you think you should?
Yeah, I can. You know, like I said, as a contractor, we don't really, I mean, sales tax we see, but the impact fees, design review fees, TEP fees, water meter, sewer, we don't really see that. It's really the developers that see that data.
Okay, so maybe developers then.
Yeah. And I have I have talked to several about those.
Yeah, but David doesn't count.
Besides David, I also did, I talked to HSL, I talked to a couple other guys.
Good.
So,
That's a joke.
yeah. Okay, any other comments or questions? So obviously, you know, the city only has the ability of controlling the city sales tax, the design review fees, the impact fees, and the water meter fees. The other stuff is payable to other entities. Okay, so the second section is code requirements. So the zoning restrictions, it's impossible to quantify that. Basically what I said is that the setback requirements, the parking requirements, the building height and density requirements might impact a project by 5 units to the acre. If you assume that land costs are roughly $15,000 a unit, you know, that's you kind of back into that $3,500 per unit would be the impact and the cost. So that one is very, very squishy. It's hard to quantify the cost of having to put in additional parking spaces because you can change the density of a project. Sarah?
Yeah, I was just gonna chime in. I just kind of remember this from my research and parking. A typical service parking stall costs between $5,000 and $10,000 to construct. And a parking space in a garage can cost $25,000 to $50,000 to construct. So there are estimates out there for space by space, and I think it would be good to put that in for parking.
Okay, so 5 to 10K.
Per surface. And that's per space.
Yeah. And then you said 25K for enclosed.
25 to 50K
Yeah, it's
for garage, which is a little different than enclosed, but yeah, for garage.
yeah.
I just to add some additional numbers in there.
Yep. Sarah?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, did you have your hand raised?
Oh no, is it still up? Oh crap.
Yeah.
It's down.
Okay. Anyway, so this one's a very loose number. The EV ordinance, we've kind of talked about this before. This is something that the city recently put in place. For what it's worth, the 24 IBC has something similar in the code, the building code, but it's probably even more stringent. There's going to be, it has even higher requirements for the number of chargers and the number of outlets for future addition of chargers that are going to be required. So
this looks really screwy because I mean that assumes 250 EV chargers and a 250 unit project, and nobody's requiring that.
no, so the way that I came up with this basically on this spreadsheet. So here I assumed these are all of the costs associated with doing the EV charger. So there's additional TEP fees. So TEP looks at the EV chargers as an unusual load. I've talked to TEP about it. So this had the TEP fees at roughly $1,200 a unit. So based on the way that the ordinance was written, it increases the total electrical load by about 70% on an apartment project. There's additional costs of the primary power, secondary power distribution, house meters and the services, all the conduit to the parking spaces, the wires and the outlet. That's a small piece of the total cost. And then, you know, if everything's in one building, the costs are going to be a lot more because you're going to be dealing with really high SES panels. So I said for a garden style, I thought it was going to be 3,300 a unit. For a large project like the Bautista, it says it's going to be closer to 5,500 a unit. So I just split the baby here and said, let's say it's 4,400 a unit. We don't, it's again, it's hard to really quantify exactly how, what that cost is gonna be.
Yeah, but I still don't see how you get to your 1.1 million.
That's assuming 250 apartments.
Right, but you don't have to do one per apartment. I mean, nobody's requiring you to do one EV charger for every apartment.
No, I'm not saying that though. I'm not saying that, David. I'm saying that it's 1.1 million to meet the 35% of the parking spaces or 25% of the parking spaces.
Oh,
So if you
I
have,
thought this was for the typical 250 unit project. Okay.
yeah, it is for 250 unit project, but a typical 250 unit project has 2 parking spaces per unit. And so if you have 25% of the spaces are EV ready, that means you've got 125 EV chargers. And then capacity for another, I think 10 or 15%. I don't remember the exact.
There's that number I question. That number I question, the 1.1 mil.
Okay. You think it's too high? I'm happy to.
I think the unit cost is not unreasonable. In fact, that unit cost might even be low.
Well, it's not. Okay, so that's cost per apartment, not cost per
charger.
charger.
Oh. Okay, then I think it's high.
Yeah. Then you think it's high.
I think that's high too.
Let's go with 3,500.
For rodeo, where we did 8 EV chargers, 4 charging stations, 8 ports. The total cost all in was about $75,000.
That's not true. That's not true. That did not include any additional TEP fees. That didn't include the additional infrastructure. So the panel costs, all that stuff was built into the electrical design. So the additional, the increased wire sizes for the primary and the secondary, the house panels, that all that included was the EV chargers. That's this line 37.
Wow.
So there's a lot more cost hidden in there than you realize, David.
Okay.
Okay. The next item is a stormwater retention, which is the stormwater retention ordinance, which basically says, I think we need to retain up to a 10-year event on site. So I said that might cost $1,500 a door. Typically what that means is you got to do underground storm drain tanks. It depends on the density of a project. So if you have a very dense project, everything's got to go underground, and then you got to recharge it into the system. The trash collection requirements, this was a suggestion from Savannah McDonald with PMM. That she thinks that based on, getting trash trucks and everything through a project, that it creates a lot more asphalt and paving. That number seems a little bit high to me, frankly. And then the last one, the exterior architectural accents. This is one that's really hard to quantify. But I've heard most cities that I work in, it's not necessarily based off of code, but they want to see more articulation in buildings. They want to see more accent materials. They don't want to see, I've even heard the mayor talk about this, that one of La Frontera's projects that went over on Grant and 6th, she hates it because it's a big stucco building. And I agree it's important to have nice looking buildings, but when you do brick, you do siding, you do steel, all these different materials, there is a cost impact on that to the cost of a project. So I said, based on what we typically see, when you add up all the additional costs of the brick and the site, all the different materials, it might be $2,000 a door on average. But again, this is all very, very loosey. Some of them are a lot more, some of them are a lot less. So any comments or questions on these items?
None from me.
Megan?
Other than I think there's some cause for concern here with the budget crises and the cuts in funding and, adding these costs to it. I'm just, afraid even if there are fourplexes and duplexes, we're not going to be producing as much housing as we need.
So by the way, the asterisks means, this was a mental note to myself. This just means it's part of the construction cost of the project.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right, so when you move down to the affordable housing related costs. Not all projects are Davis-Bacon. What drives Davis-Bacon is if there's federal funding that pays for more than 11 units. So that typically means there's more than $3 million in federal funding. That will kick in a Davis-Bacon wage rate requirement. Housing vouchers also kick in Davis-Bacon. So the 6,000 a door represents about a 2 to 2.5% increase in cost. And that's assuming it's 4 stories or less. If it's over 4 stories, the costs go up pretty significantly because you go from a residential wage rate scale to a commercial wage rate scale. So ADOH fees, I have no visibility to this, and somebody told me, I think he was
10%, it's 10%, not 8%.
10% of the total development cost.
No, 10% of the LIHTC award.
So if it's a $2.5 million award, is it 250,000?
Yes.
That's
That's the 8% reservation fee, 2% allocation fee. Then there's a lot of fees in addition to that. There's the $5,000 application fee. There's technical review fees. There's material change fees. There's all kinds of fees.
What do you think? What do you think the ADOH fees are in general?
All in, they're probably going to end up being about 12% of by the time you're done. It's hard to imagine, and I've never done a project that didn't involve at least one material change.
How much is that a door?
It's $1,500 per application for material change. So it depends on how big the project is as to how it is a door. Same is true for the reservation fees. I mean, in a 9% deal, you're maxed out at $2.5 million, whether you're 50 units or 2 or 100 units. So.
Okay. So is it the same on a 4% project as it is a 9%? Are they different?
The 10% is the same, yeah.
Okay, so if you had a 250 unit bond deal, would it be fair to say that there might be close to $1 million in ADOH fees?
Well, you're only getting 4% credits, so you're getting fewer credits. Let's say a 250 unit deal, your credits might only be, again, 2.5. It's based totally on the amount of the credit, not on the project cost.
Okay, so
it's going to be lower.
So it's going to be lower.
So it's going to be lower on the bond deal typically.
Okay. All right. So you think this looks reasonable here?
In the 9% world, the 458 is high. Again,
that'd be for a 250 unit project.
Yeah. So, but it still seems high, but just for ADOH.
maybe you guys can talk about it offline
Okay,
to get it into, you know,
all
good
right.
form.
And then the monitoring fees, I was told those are $200 per unit per year.
No, I think it's like 75 a unit a year.
Okay.
I have to look at the QAP, but I think it's 75 a unit a year.
For 15 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Federal compliance period.
So section 3 tracking, this has become much more rigorous. It's pretty much a paperwork thing. So we have to do time card tracking now for every person who works on a project, what they were doing, how much they got paid. So it's becoming a much larger paperwork issue. So it's a lot less than Davis Bacon, obviously, because you're not saying you have to pay people a certain amount, but you have to do all the same tracking for section 3. So I said that's worth about $500 a door. A PMP bond is required on almost every construction project now. All the lenders and the equity investors require that. Developer fee.
Let me just go back to compliance fees. 7,500 per unit in a multiple building project. 85 if it's just a single project building, 140 per unit if it's income averaging. But there are very few income averaging deals. There are more. They're starting to become a little more common, but
Say those numbers again.
75 per unit within a multiple building project. 85 per low income unit when each bid is its own project. So if there's just one building, I don't know, that makes no sense, but it is what it is. And then 140 per low income unit for buildings in which the owner is elected income averaging.
So we'll take the low end.
Yeah, 75 to 85 is more common.
Yeah. All right. The developer fee, that's typically 2.5 million if it's not deferred. Is that accurate?
2.75 is the max that can be paid out of cash. Anything in addition to that is deferred.
Okay. And then there's all the ADOH guidelines. The mandatory design guidelines. So you have to basically meet one of the like LEED, Energy Star, Enterprise Green Communities. There's water efficiency guidelines. You have to do energy modeling, building tightness testing, that type of stuff. Some of this is going to be part of the code requirements going forward. And then
when you say energy certification, do you mean like getting your certification for National Green Building Standards? Something like that?
Yeah.
That's not 2,000 a door.
But that includes the additional construction costs.
Oh, okay. All right. Not just the certification is actually pretty minimal. Okay.
Right.
Construction costs might be high, but the certification itself is pretty cheap.
Yeah, no, we typically have to use like a better water heater, better air conditioner. You got to seal the building. You got to do the transfer grills between the bedrooms and the living areas. I mean, there's a bunch of things that you got to do to meet those requirements. So 2,000 might be, it's getting less. I'll tell you that just because the code minimums keep getting higher. So the costs are coming down. Might be closer to 1,800 a door, something like that. Do that. All right. Any other thoughts or comments on the affordable housing costs? All right, other soft costs. So insurance is, insurance rates are going crazy. So builders risk policies have more than doubled in the last like 3 years. Liability insurance, we're seeing increases of 15 to 20% per year. So this liability insurance now is running about 1.2% of the total construction costs. Builders risks is closer to 1.5%, but then builders risks also has a lot of additional requirements for security, lighting of projects, things like that, just to try to avoid the arson that's been happening on a lot of projects. Architecture design, I think is running about 11,000 a door. FF&E is running about 1,000 a door. Financing costs, maybe 16,000 a unit, and the land averages typically on most projects about 15,000 a door. So does this all ring true?
I've never paid 15,000 a door, but just hang on a second. Belvedere, I paid a little more than 10. Rodeo, I paid virtually nothing. Amphi, that was closer to 12 or 13.
Yeah, this might be more of a market rate. I think the
That's
market rate
more of
side,
a market rate environment.
market rate's typically 15 to 25,000 a door.
That's because they're buying decent sites.
Yeah,
I'm buying shit.
yeah.
But they're great projects.
All right. So the last set of items is the 24 building code. So the EV charging, I think they've got about roughly 20% more of the spaces are EV charging for the code than what's part of the City of Tucson ordinance. So this is an adder to what's on top of the City of Tucson costs. On-site renewable energy, so every project has to be set up for solar, which means you have to master meter the project. And then additionally, they want to see sub-meters, so for each unit. So there's a lot of additional switch gear and wire that's going to be put in projects. Thermal bridging is basically on your door and window headers. You typically have 2 2x and there's an air gap between them, and they want to see that air gap filled with something. So it's going to be foam or polystyrene or something like that. So it's just to help avoid thermal gaps in the framing. Energy storage systems is basically battery systems. So they're going to want to see storage or facility set up for the future addition of battery backup systems. That's what that is. The building tightness, that's stuff that's typically already done for affordable. So that's blower door testing, pressure testing. And I actually think this is a good idea. It's a relatively low cost with a pretty good return in terms of energy efficiency. Demand response, heating, water heating, lighting. Basically, that's like those hotels where you have to put a key in a little slot in order to get your lights or air conditioning to turn on. That's what they're talking about doing now in homes. Energy monitoring is the sub-meters, the electrical sub-meters.
So can I ask a question about that? Using the cards to, you turn on your electrical and your air conditioning. I think it's a good idea, but of course, we'll end up replacing cards all the time because people are going to lose them. But how much does that add to the cost just for that piece? Do you know?
I guesstimated 2,000 a door. It's hard. I don't really know. It's a guess. So basically, I don't think the card system is what would be used. There's going to be some sort of a occupancy sensor or something just to make sure that if you're not home, so some of it might be smart thermostats for the air conditioner that's tied to people's phones. the water heating, I'm not 100% sure how that will occur. Lighting would most likely be occupancy sensors. So 2,000 might be a little bit on the high side, frankly.
Okay.
Let's reduce that. Because I think, those thermostats maybe run $200 a piece. The occupancy sensors are pretty cheap. I'm not sure how water heating is going to work. Maybe it'll be tied to a thermostat or something. I don't know. The ERV addition, the ERV stands for Energy Recovery Ventilator. And basically what that means is that when you have fresh air come into a unit, it gets mixed. So you ventilate out the air in the unit and you bring in outside air, and there's a way that they kind of mix those coming in. So it tempers the air. So you're not blowing 110-degree air into the unit. Right now, most projects don't have fresh air brought in. So you put in an exhaust fan, there's a dryer duct, there's range hood venting. All that creates a lot of negative pressure in the unit, and then air just kind of seeps in through your windows and your doors and your, however else it can get in to offset whatever's going out. So these ERVs typically run about $750 a piece installed. Passive radon is a very toxic gas. We don't really have a radon issue in Tucson, but they're basically talking about putting an under slab radon system in every project so that in the event that there is radon, the building is still usable. And then the last thing, which is something that is not part of the 2024 code, but is coming down is from the EPA, is a new mandate for R454B coolant instead of R410A. And it has a lot of additional requirements. The manufacturers are still trying to figure out how to produce those products. So the costs are still pretty squishy, but we're looking at it in a lot of different projects, and we think it's going to be about $4,000 a door. So these are all future costs that are going to start impacting projects when the EPA mandate goes into effect, which is next year, and the 24 building code goes into effect.
I have a question for Sarah. Sarah, you there?
She's here, yeah.
Okay. So, a lot of, this is all, good for the environment and stuff, but, if we don't have radon here, if people aren't, if we're serving people in housing that don't have vehicles, aren't going to have electric vehicles when they do get a vehicle, most of them are on bikes and scooters. How is the city working, is HCD working with planning and zoning on, getting reasonable about all of this?
Sarah, are you there?
Nope.
She's on mute.
I don't think all these costs are just coming from the city, though. Like the radon testing, we were required by our investor to do radon testing. So it may not just be city forcing.
Right, but when we're talking about the codes, the 2024 codes and the kinds of populations we're working with, is HCD, working with planning and zoning on, and looking at what's reasonable, depending on, the income of the population we're working with.
Sarah, do you know if HCD is involved with the code review that is being done by Development Services?
I'm sorry, ask that one more time. I had to step away to go to the restroom. What was the question?
Oh, the question is HCD involved at all with Development Services as they look at implementing the 24 building code?
In terms of what's reasonable, given the type of population we might be providing housing for.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm talking to some people in the background from development services about some of this stuff. And what I would like to see the city of Tucson do is maybe not just hang off for a year on putting it in. So wait until 2026 before implementing the code and see how other cities are impacted by it. Because we could do a bunch of things right. If interest rates come down, costs come down, and the city does a bunch of stuff to bring down the cost of building, and then we implement the new code, it could offset all the other positive things that are happening, and all of a sudden it puts projects in the point where they don't pencil again.
Right. Yeah, I mean, this is concerning.
So there's been some statistics thrown around that governmental regulations add 50% to the cost of building new units. And that's kind of one of the things I was trying to prove out here. I was curious if that was really the case. And I know a lot of these numbers aren't right. My goal was to just trying to get something in the sandbox with a rough order of magnitude. And every project's different. Every project has different requirements. But you add all this stuff up and it's a lot of money. So I couldn't quite get to the 50%, but I did get to 42%.
So what are your thoughts about, given something like this? David, chime in too. And Megan, as well as oh my God.
Well, I think
Maggie, what are your thoughts about? I mean, is this something that we should sit down and talk to Ann about, or and see if, or Liz, to see if there's something that they should know and can do? I mean, I think we need to, I don't know. I just think they need to be involved in this, because this is low income housing we're talking about. And the impact is sizable, and it'll reduce the number of units, let alone the number of projects.
Well, I can say that this is Gigi's side of what she does. And I don't know, I think this is a little obviously different than what we do, but it's $31,000 a door. It sounds, yeah, definitely. I feel a huge issue. I don't know what numbers are different for, the type of development that we do. I know we don't do Davis-Bacon, things like that. But the meter, the water meter fees, all of the fees that, and we obviously get impact fee, subsidies. But I think a lot of this stuff doesn't really apply to us. But we do have a project that, is almost an acre, and I'm like wondering, oh, geez, what's, maybe these things will apply. I don't know. And especially if we decide to do affordable rental. So I don't know. I'd like to get a copy of this and, show it to Gigi and see what she has to say. I've been asking her to come in and sit on these meetings because she's, much more well-versed in the development and construction.
I'll email it to you, Maggie. I do think a lot of these costs are different on a single family than they are on multifamily. So for example, setting up solar on a single family is not a big deal. You don't have to worry about master metering or putting in any giant SES panels or anything like that. Typically in a house, if you want to do an EV charger, you just add another 40 amp circuit. Most houses have 200 amp panels. They've got the capacity to add a 40 amp circuit or 50 amp circuit for the garage. You don't have different people pulling up to your space. You don't have to meter that EV charger separately. So that, a lot of the infrastructure costs are different in single family than they are in a multifamily project.
Right.
So going back to this impact fee thing, so as you can see, I mean, the impact fees make up a very small portion of the total cost. But the city of Tucson doesn't, I mean, they've got the ability to affect water meter fees, impact fees, design review fees, city sales tax. I think the code requirements is something that the city of Tucson has control over. Really don't have control over any of these affordable housing costs, any of the soft costs. Those are going to be required no matter what, who's doing or what's going on. This is another thing that the city does have control over. They don't have to implement the 24 code right away. So, you know, of all of this stuff in here, you know, the city has somewhat limited ability to control the costs. Megan?
Sorry, couldn't find the button. I was just gonna say, you know, I remember that for a while, Corin Manning was attending, I believe, this subcommittee. And like she spoke to this subcommittee when the EB, you know, when that was being reviewed and decided on how it was gonna move forward. There's been some other changes that I think she's presented on, but it doesn't feel like there's been a consistent, role for PDSD to play in this subcommittee, and then that feels like a missing component, because so much of this is going to come from planning and development services and not from HCD. And so I'm wondering if part of, you know, the focus or request can be an active role from PDSD in the affordable housing subcommittee.
Yeah, I can talk to
That's a
Corin.
great idea. Great idea. Yeah.
I'll just chime in real quick too on that, Megan, you're right. And I think, you know, part of the issue, Corin was attending, and then I think we just had some scheduling issues. And, you know, I think in that she kind of got off of the regular meetings, et cetera. But I do agree. And she was out of town this week. Otherwise, I think she would have attended today. But we can definitely try to reestablish that relationship again. And I also think that it's Corin, but also Lauren Seamus is sort of a dedicated staff person in planning and development services that I think we're going to also want to try to get to attend the affordable housing subcommittee meetings as well. Because she's, you know, I've sort of acted as that point person to help with PDSD and affordable housing projects, but now Lauren is that person to go to, dedicated to helping those projects. So we can coordinate to start getting them to come to the subcommittee meetings as well.
Do you know if it's fair to ask? I mean, you know, obviously, I think this came from the HCD side, all of these groups. So is it, you know, when there's requests or certain things that need action, is that an acceptable route for this subcommittee to push on the PDSD side? And ask the same, like, as I think there's been requests periodically of HCD staff to do deeper dives. Is that allowable to do to the PDSD staff as well?
I think that the full commission has the ability to really make those recommendations. And so, yes, I think like you are a city commission, you're a subcommittee of a city commission. And so I think that you have the city at, like, if there's anything that you feel like you want staff to look at, whether it's planning and development services or transportation or, and you know, because other things come into play too that make me think about this. And I don't know if you have on here trash, but we always have issues with environmental and general services and figuring out, all the trash collection. So there's different groups in this city. And I think the commission can tap other departments as well. I just think it has to come from the full commission.
We should probably check on that. To see if it has to come from the full commission. Is that something that you could get back to us on?
Yeah, well, what I was thinking we would do is, so this was just a first cut, and I guess I will email this to everybody who's on the call. If there are other categories that we should be adding, if there's other things, you know, that we need to do to kind of flush this out, let's do that, but then what I'd like to really do next meeting is take a closer look at the impact fee rates and see if we can come back with a recommendation on what we think the city should be doing for impact fees going forward.
So let's make sure that Corin is, can attend.
Is that Corin or Daniel that's doing that for the city? For the development impact fees?
Well, the impact fee update is handled right now by the manager's office. So
Oh.
the city manager's office is working on the update. In the past, like the last time around, 5 years ago, Elisa Hamblin was the sort of project manager for updating the impact fees. It's handled through PDSD, right? So they're a part of it, but they have staff from the manager's office working on impact fees.
Do you know who that person would be?
Yeah, it was Antonio was the person that I was working with. But you could also we could ask Corin and just say, we could get clarity on who that is.
I don't know. I mean, would it make more sense to have them at the meeting, or would it make more sense for us to formulate an opinion and then present it to them?
I think that it's both, kind of, right? I think that we need to really understand what we want to say and have good evidence, right? Or not we, but the subcommittee. And then I think from what I remember, there's public outreach processes through the impact fee update. And so there will be public meetings and things, but getting ahead of it and then having it prepared. So I think it's both.
Okay. All right. Okay, well, any, I guess, final comments on this before we close this out? Or any other thoughts?
Hey, Jim, just, living outside of this work world, let me just ask you just a rough question though for me. So the summary of the fees that you're showing here in your spreadsheet, just for somebody who doesn't know, is that like a third of the cost of the actual project or something?
No. So if you assume, so I said total development cost, which includes everything. If you buy the land, you go through all the entitlements, get the plans done, get the construction done, basically get it ready to lease. I said the average cost is $380,000 a door. So this, this portion here makes up what, 5%, 6-7%, somewhere in there. Does that answer your question, Michael?
Well, I was looking at the total, the summary cost down at the bottom. I mean,
yeah. So what I said here is the total development cost is $380,000 per unit. So this, for an affordable housing deal, like if you look at the tax credit awards from this last year, I think Dave and I were looking at that yesterday. It was right around wasn't it right around 380? David?
Around 380. Yeah, around 380 a unit.
Yeah. So now that doesn't include any of this, obviously. This is not part of anybody's costs structure. But, adding all this stuff up is 42% of the 380,000.
okay. Yeah, I was just, like I said, I don't deal with these numbers every day, and I'm looking at it and trying to, make it understandable to me. But yeah, thanks.
Okay. Well, let's bring the meeting to a close. So definitely want to do the impact fee recommendation. Any other agenda items for our next meeting that anybody wants to talk about?
Yes.
Oh yeah, you have one, David.
Yeah, there is one thing I'd like to put on the agenda for next month. which is in August when Arizona Department of Housing has its annual forum. They'll release any changes to the tax credit qualified allocation plan. One of the things that I think can be improved in terms of scoring that will help Tucson, particularly relative to Maricopa County, is a change in the definition of a employment center. Right now, an employment center is defined as any single employer, whether it be public or private, with 250 or more employees. I am proposing that it be changed to a single location with 250 or more employees, and that could be a shopping center. It could be any kind of thing, because to the employee, it's irrelevant if it's a single employer or a lot of employers. The employee just wants a job. That would open up. There aren't that many places in Tucson that single employers in Tucson that have more than 250 employees. I mean, so you got downtown with the city, the county, you got near the university, you got Davis-Monthan, but there are a lot of places that don't have 250. Let's say you're by Tucson Mall. You've got more than 250 employees there, but you don't have a single employer. So I have something I've drafted that I've sent to Jim that I'd like to have this body consider endorsing.
Okay,
Yeah, that's a great idea.
so I'm gonna genericize that, David, and just say QAP feedback from the commission. And assuming we could get something drafted up in our next meeting, get it approved by the overall commission, we can send that to the city and ADOH. And I do believe we have a July meeting, but I am out for our next meeting actually in July.
Well, you need to be there.
I'm out. So we could push it back a week. Right now, the next meeting is July 17th. We could do the 20th. No, we can't do the 17th. Wait, July, so we could do the 24th.
I should be here.
I have no
Let's
plan.
just make sure that development services can be here too.
Okay, I'll see if we can get it changed to the 24th. Okay, any other agenda items anybody would like to see? Okay, then we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Great meeting.
Thank you.
Thank
All right,
you.
Joe.